welcome everyone to this artist talk celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Sitka Center's Jordan Schnitzer Printmaking Residency program and the portfolio project that we've put together with artists who participated in the program over the decades to celebrate both the Sitka's 50th anniversary and the program's 20th anniversary. The exhibit and the program would not be possible without the visionary support of Jordan Schnitzer. We are also particularly grateful to Todd Putnam and the whole team at Framing Resource for their work framing the exhibit at Waterstone Gallery. Framing Resource has been a longtime supporter of Sitka Center, and we are grateful for their ongoing generosity. We're also grateful to Sitka's sponsors and foundation supporters, including the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation and Jordan Schnitzer, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Robert and Mercedes Eicholtz Foundation, Oregon Arts Commission, Oregon Cultural Trust, Explore Lincoln City, Scott Ceramic Products, Brian Potter Design, Park Lane Sweets, and Siltstone Wines. And if you've been coming to a lot of our talks, I'm especially excited for this one because my talking is over. I'm gonna hand the Zoom mic over to Lisa DeGrace in just a second to help introduce the program a little bit further. Before I do that, we should have some time questions and answers during them. If you're watching via Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature to send your questions, and we'll do our best to get as many of those to our artist panelists as possible. And with that, enjoy the talk. I know I'm going to, and I'll hand it over to Lisa.
Hey everyone, I'm Lisa DeGrace. As Allison said, I'm really happy to be here today. And so excited for this exhibition. I hope that some of you had a chance to see it, and if not, it's at Waterstone Gallery in Portland, Oregon through February 28th. They're open on Saturday and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then also by appointment as requested. And we'll hopefully have someone from Waterstone joining us in a little while, and we'll have them say a little bit more about their gallery. It's a really beautiful space, and we're so happy to be collaborating with them. A lot of partners at the gallery, including Greg Wilbur and Michael DeForest, who just, it seemed like effortlessly hung this show. Shuyu, Nancy, Angelita, and Carolyn, each who took a step in publicity, websites, and all sorts of collaboration with us. So we're really grateful for all of them. And of course, for 20 years of work, we have to thank Julia Dimario, who's been our master printmaker for all of those years. And again, to Jordan Schnitzer for joining us on this vision 20 years ago. So we're really excited to be able to celebrate this amazing work with this exhibit, especially in these times. It just feels really magical to actually go in a gallery and see a show. So again, if you're able to, I really encourage it. So the print residency is a pretty unique program. Each year, an artist who is not terribly experienced or not experienced at all in printmaking is paired with Julia for 2 weeks to create work at Sitka under Julia's tutelage. And it's a really, you'll see, it's such an amazing opportunity. And I just really am looking forward to the conversations, hearing a little bit more about the relationships between the work. You know, how do you take a sculpture and translate that to print? I didn't know it could be done until I saw Patti Warashina's work a while ago. So that's what we'll be looking at. We'll just have each artist who's here today introduce their work a little bit, show a few images from the medium that they're more traditionally working in, and then show the prints from the folio. If you have questions for a particular artist along the way, you can put those in the Q&A, and otherwise we can just do questions as a group at the end. And those are my introductions. So I'm just gonna show you a couple shots here, again, just to give you a teaser of what's happening inside Waterstone, and hoping that you'll be able to come and see it. And then I'm just going to pass it right to Julia, who can tell you more of the history than I did, and sort of the process, and then also talk about her own work. So Julia, you're up.
Hello, my name is Julia Dimario, and as Lisa said, I have been coming to Sitka for actually over 20 years. I first came as just an artist in residence in 1996, and I fell in love with Sitka and with the environment around Sitka. And I also became good friends with Frank Boyden, the founder, and the then executive director, Randall Cook. And Sitka had purchased this Ray Trail press years before, and felt like they both felt it was being underutilized, and they wanted to come up with some way to have the press be more a part of what Sitka could offer. And they asked me if I would be willing to come out for a few months a year and work with artists and use the press and sort of build an archive for Sitka. Every year when the two and now three artists come to Sitka, I produce editions of 10, and Sitka retains 5 of those prints, and the artist leaves with 5. So Sitka has quite an archive of prints, which they can sell and give to donors and exhibit. And this gives Sitka a base or exposure in the art world. I have loved coming, and I feel like this community is a second home for me. And although I had been printing and continued to print in a New York City print shop where we worked with artists with a lot of printmaking experience, I wanted, for my own benefit and also to create a mission for Sitka that was maybe a little bit different, to invite artists who had careers going in other medium, not beginning artists necessarily, but artists, serious artists who painted or worked in sculpture, ceramics, any medium really, if they were interested, to learn something new and to try this for the first time. So there is a sense of discomfort at first when the artist comes in, because all the materials are new, all the information I'm giving them is brand new to them, most of them. Or I heard many times, well, I took one printmaking class way back in undergrad, but I don't remember anything. Well, that's fine. That's what I wanted. I want people to be out of their comfort zone and to try something new. And inevitably, they were surprised by what they produced and what the experience left them with, and the sort of tools or the visions they took back to their own studio, and how maybe it changed the way they saw what they were doing in their own studio. And my big hope is that they would find ways, if possible, to make prints in other places, and to continue on with the knowledge that they'd acquired in the print shop for 2 weeks. It's not a lot of time, but it actually is plenty of time to produce some work. So this is a picture of me working on plates by an artist named Gail Grinnell, who lives in Seattle. And I guess that's basically the summation of what this program is and what my mission has been over the last 20 years. And I guess we could go, Lisa, to my work. I'm also, as well as being a printmaker, I'm a painter, and over the years, I've developed this way of working using topographical maps. I've always been fascinated with maps, old maps, new maps that help me get places. I like road maps. I like all maps. And over the course of the 25 years I lived in New York City, I would look for ways to get out of the city. So in order to do my work. And so I did a lot of artist residencies over the 20 years I lived in the city. And these paintings, you could go to the next one. It's a triptych. I went to a small artist residency in Newfoundland, And I absolutely fell in love with that landscape and the people of Newfoundland. And I was staying in a small cove, a place called Pooch Cove, and its claim to fame was that one year, and it was actually the year Queen Elizabeth came to visit Newfoundland, an iceberg lodged itself in the cove. I was there in April, which traditionally has been the iceberg migration month. It's when icebergs start floating south. And this one lodged itself and ruined the summer because the summer was foggy and cold and the Queen couldn't come to Pooch Cove. And the other thing Newfoundland is famous for is very brave and very crazy fishermen. And they were all told not to go out to the iceberg, but everybody told me they went out in their small boats and chipped off the ice to save in their freezers because it made the best ice for cocktails because it does not melt fast. It doesn't dilute the martini. So everybody had a stash of iceberg ice in their freezer, which I thought was hilarious. But anyway, they inspired me to do these 3 paintings. You can do the next. And they're all bird's eye views. I wanted them to feel like bird's eye views of the iceberg working its way into the cove. And so the next slide is a picture of the triptych. So you sort of see it like the bird is, oh no, yeah, that one, this one, is swooping down over the cove, and you can read what you want. I like them to feel somewhat abstract and yet also recognizable as well as something earthly. All right, and then the next slide is of the same idea. I was in the south of France for 6 months teaching printmaking, but I also did a lot of map paintings. And this one was almost like a visual diary of my time there. So it was the confluence of the 3 rivers that ran nearby where I was, and they all ran into the Mediterranean. So I wanted to just capture everything that meant something significant to me about my 6 months there. And I painted these in panels and sewed them onto a piece of canvas so I can fold it up like an old map. I can fold it up into a square and unfold it and feel like I'm looking at a map. And I have started, I live in Northern California now, and I have for the past 16 years, and I've started slowly getting back into painting and doing some map studies, mostly in print and drawing now, but I'm hoping to get into some large scale paintings of the valley where I live. And and doing these map paintings have always made me feel as if I'm getting to know a place better. I've done a number of Sitka ones. I don't have slides of them here, but I've done a lot of my map paintings about Sitka and the Cascade Head as well. Lisa, you can go to the prints that I have in the show. So the one in the middle is the print from the portfolio, but all 3 of them are details from the Hayes Mountains, which are in Nevada. I live, my valley straddles the borders of California and Nevada in the northeast corner of California. And they're old, worn down mountains that are very easy to hike in. It's high desert there, scrub, sage, and just a magical place to explore. And I have a lot of Forest Service maps from there. My husband was an avid hiker. He hiked all over these mountains, and he made notes on his maps where he found interesting things or formations. And so I'm doing a series of prints based on his notations from his Forest Service maps. And so the 2 prints on either side are just sort of close-up details of the larger area of Little Hat Mountain in the Hayes Range in Surprise Valley, California. And so I think that's about all I have to say.
Julia, someone asked what medium you're using with the painting.
With the painting, oil paint on canvas. Yeah, and this print is a 2-plate print, so there's an aqua tint, a light green aqua tint printed under the black key plate, which has most of the information on it.
Great. And someone else asked if you were teaching in the south of France.
I was teaching through Bard College in upstate New York. Yeah, I was teaching printmaking. They had a small study abroad program in Lacoste, France, and now it's run by the Savannah College of Art and Design. But at the time, this was in 2000, Bard College was running it, and they asked me to just be one semester instructor for that program, and I said yes, absolutely.
So pretty easy yes, I would
Yes,
guess.
it was an easy yes.
Great, thank you. And we'll come back with more questions, I'm
Okay.
sure. But I think we'll move on to Dana. Lynn Lewis. And I should say, I didn't give a great introduction of Julia, and Julia did a beautiful job of that herself, of course. But I should also mention that in the times that she's not vitalizing our print program at Sitka, Julia is also, she mentioned having worked at PACE for a long time and also has had a longstanding collaboration with Jim Dine, who I'm sure many of you know. And so Dana Lynn Lewis lives here in Portland, is the founding director of Gather Make Shelter in Portland, which is just a wonderful program here in Portland, represented by Russo Lee Gallery, and has received recently a career opportunity grant from the Ford Family Foundation for a 6-week residency at Thread in Senegal, West Africa. I'm not sure if you've done that yet or if you've been COVID prevented. Twice, okay. And there's a lot more. Obviously, we have, when you go to the gallery, there's bios for all the folks there. So I'll just mention a few highlights as I introduce. So thanks, Dana.
Thank you. So I'm really happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk with these amazing artists and Julia, who's an incredible shepherd of the medium and wizard to finesse all of us into creating beautiful things that couldn't have been imagined without her. So Julia, I thank you so much. And also Jordan for having the vision to create this program. And I don't know if you're out there, but I really appreciate how much you support so many of us in so many ways. And Sitka and Jane and Frank for their vision for starting it all. So to start with that, thank you. The first image that we're looking at is actually made on tarlatan, which is the stuff that Julia uses to wipe people's plates off. And I became obsessed with it when I was in the print shop with Julia. I'm a sculptor and a painter, and I do installation work and lots of mixed media. And then I'm also a creative social activist with the project that Lisa mentioned called Gather Make Shelter. This piece, Julia has been collecting for years, and she just told me before we got on this call that she's got some red for me. I'm very excited about that. And I've just been sewing it together and drawing on it and thinking about it and trying to figure out how it was going to manifest in the work, which actually came together in an exhibition in 2019, just before the pandemic hit a year ago now, actually, which is crazy to think about that. And just prior to that, I had been to, or during the time I was working on this exhibition, I had been to Sitka with Julia to work on the print. So there's a lot that's actually in this piece that resonates with the work that is in the exhibition.
And my work in general explores the fragility of our being and the spirit, the essence of our spirit. And I'm very tied into nature and humanity and shelter in lots of different ways, whether that is conceptual or actual or physical. Also, the work that I do with the houseless population is constantly ongoing, and the work that you see here is very quiet and meditative, and it is the work that grounds me and allows me to be able to be so many things with and for other people. So it's a spiritual practice, a visual practice, and also very much is about and actually a collaboration with the people, a conceptual collaboration with the people. At this point, thousands of people that I'm working with. So we could go on to the next slide. This is pretty hard to see. It's 14 feet tall, just to give you some reference point. And it represents the first 600 people that I worked with in the Gather, Make, Shelter project. So Gather, Make, Shelter, for those of you who don't know, you can look at it online. It's gathermakeshelter.org. And it's a citywide collaboration with the houseless population and creatives all over Portland. And the first year, I thought it was going to be a 1-year project, because I do that, and then I work in Africa, I travel, I do different things, and then I kind of check it off my list and move on. Not to check it off my list in a negating way, but just like I did that, now it's time to do something else. Well, when we came to the sort of final festival, which was held at Pioneer Courthouse Square, everybody from the philanthropists to the people who are experiencing houselessness and poverty and artists and volunteers said, what are we going to do next? So we're 3 years in now, and I'm so proud of everybody that's working on this project. It's really magical, and it's really doing so many things. And I could take more time on that, but I won't. So to say that this piece though represents the essence and the souls of the first 600 people that I worked with in the first year. We can go to the next one, and people can get a little bit more. So I tied everybody together with these little essence of like a prayer bead drawing, and then I cut it out in these shapes so that you can see all these shadows reflect on the wall behind it. So it actually is of the person, but also allows them to be who they are, which depending on how it's lit changes, and everybody changes, and it's got a very sort of gentle nod to that. The next one. This piece actually probably most like directly maybe looks like a similar to Orbit, which is the piece that I have in the exhibition right now. It's they're made on fiber, and they're made with cut very delicate sort of cutting and drawing, and then there's a lot of things about them that they layer up onto each other, which actually, when I started printing with Julia, I had been working in glass and other transparent materials, but the way that Julia taught me the printmaking process was really conducive to the way that I think about things, but also has informed and impacted other work that I've done since then, which it's been really wonderful. The next piece. This is the piece that's in the exhibition with the print right now. And it's it grows from the center out, and then it kind of dissipates on the top, and it floats away from the wall in a way that it also has a very ephemeral kind of shadowy experience. And then the next piece. And this is the piece that I did for the portfolio, which also, it's hard to tell exactly from the slide, but if you see it in person, or when you get to see it in person, Julia helped me work on representing the tarlatan. So we actually printed the tarlatan on the, I don't know how, Julia, you can probably talk about them more eloquently than I can, how we use the tarlatan as a medium to burn into the plate, and then created other layers on top of that. And there's other things to say about that. but it was really nice to be able to come back to the medium that I'm using in physical form with sculpture and be able to represent that somehow in this print. So anyway, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
This print in particular, I would say just, yeah, you can just get a hint of it here, but the detail is really just exquisite. When you see it in person, I feel like I could just stand in front of it and just stand in front of it,
Thank you.
absorb it for days. So
Thank you.
yeah, so it's really beautiful. And also one of the ones I just really enjoyed. It felt like a real aha to me to see this print and then see your other work in relationship.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, for everybody, but this one in particular. Okay, let's see. So next we have Ryan Pierce. Ryan works in large-scale paintings depicting our world recovering from human industry. Influences include ecological theory, literature, and folk art to create scenes that portray the resilience of the natural world. He's exhibited internationally and has been recognized by grants from the Joan Mitchell and San Francisco Foundations, among others. He's represented by Elizabeth Leach here in Portland. And I'm also really pleased to say that he just, a month ago, joined the Sitka Center board. So we're really glad to have him with us today.
Hi, thanks for the introduction, Lisa. And I want to echo Dana's sentiment of appreciation for this program and for the staff and vision of the Sitka Center. And it's an honor to get to be one of the artists here and to show with this cadre. So when I look at this piece, which was the first print that I made with the program, I see all the anxiety that I was experiencing in 2010. I was just a year out of grad school and was teaching. I was doing that thing where you're teaching 100 different adjunct jobs at regional colleges and flying around to each one and trying to patch together a full-time job out of all these little bitty ones. And it wasn't the sort of empowering and enriching experience that I had imagined when I was going to art school to be doing that hustle as a professor. And then I don't know how they found me, but they sent me an invitation to come out for 2 weeks at Sitka and to be an artist. And I think that, like, for me, it was maybe the first time in my professional career that somebody sort of said, hey, this is your job now. And so, yeah, it was just so game changing for me. And I came out and even continued to commute back to Portland to teach my classes and kind of played hooky on a few of them. But once I got out there, I remembered, just Julia's expertise and really warm, communicative bedside manner. I mean, she's just so good at working with artists. And, she's like, okay, so, we get up in the morning and we work all day. And then we do that the next day and the next day and the next day. And I was like, oh, wow, I had not thought about what to do. And so I kind of scrambled, and one of the things that Julia is so good at is kind of supporting you through learning the range of techniques that's available. And so you look at all the prints that have happened from previous generations of the program, and you get to try out different moves and imagine what would kind of be exciting for your process interests and a good fit for your work. So this one, I was like, well, let's print a piece of fabric and, like, try this as a resist. And you can advance to the next slide, please, Lisa. And I ended up kind of, over the course of maybe 5 prints in that initial batch, really stripping back my expectations and opening up to some simpler imagery. My painting work is very maximalist. It's extremely graphic and like real busy on a formal level. And I think I just needed some quiet headspace and to walk up Cascade Head and be in the mist. And it just got me thinking about my garden and the simplicity of the tasks I was doing as a gardener, intending for something with sort of a slow patience and long-term thinking that was so different from the frenetic pace of my life at that time. And so I just started making prints of vegetables and weeds. And this actually galvanized a body of work for me on a conceptual level. And it also impacted my painting process quite a bit. And this wasn't evident to me at the time, but my work is really centered on the natural world, and I'm really interested in whole earth sciences and in theories, ecological theories like bioregionalism, and thinking about the benefits of restructuring human systems around the health of natural systems. And so I did this project called New World Atlas of Weeds and Rags. Next slide, please. And this is an image from that show from a couple of years later. And this was a body of work about looking at weeds in the context of climate change. And the central question of the body of work was, what are weeds doing in a climate changing world that we're not recognizing or appreciating? And I was just noticing how much vitriolic language we have around weeds, around invasive plants, and what's native, what's invasive, and that really mirrors a lot of the xenophobia that we project onto human society and human communities. And so rather than look at weeds as the problem, I wanted to kind of question them as the symptom. And this slide is also an example of the way that the printmaking process impacted how I worked as a painter. And I've always been very layered. I work with acrylic paint with like a hairdryer over my shoulder. So I'm just like layer, zap it, and kind of like erasing back through. And with the printmaking process, it allowed my mind to think about the interlocking aspects of the layers even more and to go deeper into that kind of complexity. Next slide, please. And so this is a detail from that piece. The whole thing, which is called Flawed Weave, is I think it's about 4 by 4 feet square painting, and it has these little moths flying around on it. And this is a process. The wings of that moth were made by sort of like toasting the canvas with a lighter, so staining it with soot, and then taping off different areas and pulling them off, and then sealing it with clear acrylic paint before progressing with the rest of the painting. Next slide, please. There's another image using some of the same methods. This is called Sun Scorched. And next slide, please. Oh, previous slide, please.
Sorry, I will say that as we got to this slide, I recalled that I needed to add in your slide from the actual folio.
Oh yeah, no problem. So that's in the show, right? People can go see it. And just imagine that it's like the triumph of my career so far and the culmination of all the promise inherent in my youth. Anyway, so yeah, it was a really big treat to get to come back out to Sitka and see Julia again, and get to work on this portfolio. And like Lisa mentioned, I'm the newest member of the Sitka Board of Directors, and I'm just so excited about the history of the organization as well as where it's going. So if you're not already a donor, just imagine how that would enrich your life and open that open that other tab as we speak. Okay, thanks. I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Ryan. And I really do the image that from the folio that's in the show is such a wonderful counterpoint to this one. So again, please do come if you can. So next up we have Patti Warashina. And when I said at the beginning that comparison of sculpture to printmaking, I was thinking of Patti. I happened to intersect with Patti and Julia when they were working, I think in 2005 or 2006 at Sitka Center, and just was blown away by the relationship of these two mediums. So really I was so glad to see that Patti's in the folio as well. Patti is primarily a ceramicist. She is based in Seattle, Washington. Her works are included in the Smithsonian, at the Renwick, the Museum of Art and Design in New York, the John Mitchell Kohler Art Center, the Chazen Museum in Wisconsin. The list goes on and on. She's just received numerous awards for her work and is just a delight to be with. So I'm so glad she's here with us. Over to you, Patti.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to also thank Julia and the Sitka Center and all the sponsors for this particular program that I was able to come to. And I'm not exactly sure how I got on there, but I really enjoyed my time and especially the adventures that I had with Julia looking for her dog and things. And those are real memorable experiences for me. But also learning about printmaking. When I was at the university, I graduated from the University of Washington. And I had never planned on being an artist. I was actually going to go into a science field because you know how your parents are kind of want you to have a living, make a living. And so I had never taken any art classes, and I had it in high school. And so when I got to university, I had this elective, and I had to take it out of my major area. So somebody signed me up for a drawing class, and there's this fellow named John Constantine, and he was a grad student at the time. And I just remember just falling in love with this class. And I'd go in after hours, you know, and I didn't even know what a charcoal stick was even at that time. And eventually I just kept taking more classes. And one day I happened to go down the hall, and I saw this pottery studio, and God, that looked like great fun. And so I took this class, and I just never left. And there was something about this material that really touching this material and working with it that really related to my sensibilities. And I learned early on too that in ceramics, you know, I was very much interested in the wheel and learning how to conquer the wheel. And you know, I got so I could throw 20 pounds of clay. And I had this friend, John Booker, who we used to race to see who could make the highest cylinder. And anyway, it kind of started out like that. But then later on, I realized I was taught that, you know, in ceramics, you're not only making this vessel, but you have to paint it, and you have to draw on it. And we weren't allowed to just dip it in glaze, but we had to start to draw on it. So I was encouraged to take some painting classes, and I always wanted to take printmaking. But the problem was, my advisor said, "Don't take printmaking, Pat, because it's too involved. It's like ceramics. There's just too much technical things that you have to know, and it really." So I never was able to take printmaking until, you know, I ran into Julia, and it's very similar to ceramics in a lot of ways, in that you have the surface, and then you have to draw into it, you scratch into it, and that's the similarities that I see in it. And so I think I could have, if I had gone into it earlier, maybe my work would have been a lot better. But anyway, this is a piece that recently I've done these. It's called a cloud bank series. and it's on this steel table, and it's a I'm pretty much a junkie on news, and I get very irritated, and I get excited, and whatever's happening in the news. And I take two newspapers in the morning, and I go through both of them in the morning, and then I sometimes, if I don't have time to read both of them, I'll take the second one and I'll throw it on the stairs, and then I bring it up to bed at night and continue reading it. I'm a terrible sleeper, but so a lot of my imagery is really reacts against what's happening in the world around me, and things that I feel agitated about, or maybe even feel comfortable about. So this is kind of the result. This is a result of this. This is probably done a year ago, and it's a fairly large piece. And what it has on it is, I think there might be on this particular side, there's these women marching, and also it talks about the Middle Eastern wars and things that are happening in there. And also there's a North Korean leader on the backside, and the Capitol building, in which is spewing out all these problems that we're having in the United States now. So at the top, you see this kind of spewing out of all this kind of uh, problems that we're having, and Twitter on the top, which talks about our past president. And on the front, on the left-hand side, you'll see this figure. It's flying in the air, and that's Trump. And I am not sure whether the detail shows this. So we'll go on to the detail. Oh, this is the front side. So what you're looking at is, you're looking at Trump, and you're seeing all the people that were politically involved in his problems, and then Putin, which is on his backside and flying through the air. And so this is kind of what my head does. It's like going to a shrink, think of it. And probably cheaper than going to a shrink, because I can be one myself. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what the next slide is, but so this actually came out of a series of cats that I made, and the cats are, I wasn't really sure what I was trying to say with the cats, except I like animals, but the cats were jars, so the heads move around, they can slide around. And during this period of time, I was getting more and more upset. And this one is called A Pussy in Disguise. And what it is our past president, and he's holding a mask of Putin, and under his small hand in the front is the press, and suppressing the press. And his tail is as a cat. He's kind of striped, he has striped fur, but also it's in the shape of a dollar sign. And also it kind of designates I better not say. So anyway, this is the way my head goes, and it's about, what, 25 inches tall. Okay, and let's see what the next one is. Oh, this is a past piece. So all through my career that I've had, I've worked over 50 years in ceramics, and it's really taken various shapes and sizes. And what this is, a series called the Drunken Power series. And I think this was done quite a few years ago. And what this is a tray. And this tray is actually a sake set. So what you see is this woman who's the bottle, it's a ewer. And her head comes off as the knob of the bottle. And the spout itself is where you pour the sake out of it. And this is called green leaf. And the cups themselves are those stumps that you see. And as you pick them up, you can flip them over, and they become the cups that you drink out of. And at this particular series that I was doing, I was again talking about our environment and what was happening to our environment, and just being able to discuss this over this sake that you're talking with another person. And and then the handle is the arms. I think these pieces were made, the cups and the ewer itself were probably porcelain, and the rest of it was earthenware, the landscape tray. Okay, and I'm not sure what the next one is. Oh, this was in the show. And so you see the cat that I was talking about, the series of cats that I made, and birds. But in the background, I had forgotten that this until I got it in the mail. But it was a print that I made with Julia, and it's called Curtain Call. And again, what it's about is you see the cat running out of the picture plane, and this smokestacks in the back kind of causing pollution, and just kind of the distortion of our environment, and the burning sun, and these flying birds. And she's pulling this curtain called Curtain Call. So I guess that's it, kids.
Patti, someone asked if Martha asked if your pieces are thrown or hand built.
Oh, you mean the clay pieces are all hand built? I don't throw that much anymore. I pretty much dropped. I mean, I love throwing, and I got fairly proficient at it a long time ago. And I burn out, and I quit. I just gave it up. And now when I have shapes that I can make on the wheel, I kind of avoid using the wheel. And the reason why is because I don't want to clean it up. I want to drag it out and clean it off. So I hand build pretty much everything. And I use a lot of molds too. I make a lot of molds, and but basically, and for a long time, I was building with a lot of clay slabs. I roll it out on a roller, very much like your printmaking machines. And I roll out these big slabs, and then I can build pretty fast. I can build pretty large figures and stuff using these slabs. But mainly, it's a combination of ways that I work too. So.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
So last but not least, just alphabetically last, we'll come to Heather Watkins. And actually, just before I introduce Heather, I wanted to say there's been a note up on the screen for a little bit here from Jane Beebe that says, Dana and Ryan, your work to make it a better world is so admirable. So I just agree and wanted to share that comment with everyone. So thank you. So Heather Watkins, speaking of Jane Beebe, is represented by PDX Contemporary Art here in Portland. Heather's work explores the nature and possibilities of the drawn line, both concretely and poetically. From intimately scaled embroideries to large sculptural fiber installations, her practice is process-driven, rooted in material investigation, and concerned with the language of abstraction. And her work, as you'll see, takes many forms: sculpture, drawing, text-based work, printmaking, writing, photography, and artist books. And I am excited to hear Heather talk, particularly because I was just, when I saw her work, the relationship between her traditional mediums and sculpture and the printmaking is just really interesting to me. So I'm really curious to hear her share more about that with us. So thanks, Heather.
Thank you for that introduction, Lisa. And I'll just reiterate my enormous thanks to Sitka and to Julia in particular, and to the people who founded and have supported this program. It's just such a gift, and a double whammy to be able to return again to Sitka. So thank you. So Lisa, you can advance to the image. 10 years ago, when I was invited to make prints with Julia the first time, I was using a lot of indirect drawing processes. things like pouring ink on sheets of paper and bending and tilting the paper to make the lines. And in doing that, my purpose was really to arrive at something unexpected, something surprising, and to find ways to embrace unexpected outcomes and sort of fold that into the work. I kind of wanted to see how much control I could give over to a material or a process and yet still feel connected to it and in it. And so when I was invited to make etchings to do intaglio printing with Julia, I was thrilled and a little nervous, because my understanding that at the time is that intaglio printing isn't exactly the technique you choose for wild, open-ended experimentation. My perception was that it's all about having a pretty clear sense of what you're aiming for, and all the steps to get there are very deliberate. But guided by Julia's incredible, intuitive, nimble, patient way of working, we kind of dissected my processes, and I was able to find a lot of ways to work with a feeling of immediacy and responsiveness. So this is one of the prints. I think I made 5 or 6 prints with Julia. And like Ryan said, the way that she kind of shows you lots of past prints, there's, you know, go to the library there at Sitka and have a chance to look through and learn about some of the possibilities. I was so grateful that Julia was willing to take me through all of that. And then we made like 1 million test plates. I wanted to see every kind of line I could try. And the goal was really to kind of like find ways for my process to meet what Julia could envision. And it was really kind of eye-opening and expansive. Lisa, can you advance to the next one? This is one of the others, a diptych. And I didn't put all of them in, but I think on the PDX website you can see more. There are some others that I wish I'd put in where we were where I was drawing with thread and cord and yarn, and Julia figured out a way to make plates with this very loose drawing process that I had been doing. Anyway, I've been trying to think about what might connect or how to connect these earlier prints with the one I made in the portfolio, which, as you will see, is quite different. Has a really different energy. And one through line for me is really line, my obsession with, in particular, the kinds of lines you see that feel inadvertent, like dark, twisty branches in trees and ruptured cracks in asphalt, and the seams, the mesmerizing repair seams, and especially the endlessly varied characteristics of fiber, which is one of the main materials I work with. Lisa, can you advance to the next? So one way I've been exploring the kind of energy of lines, in addition to the work that I make, is through photography. And although it's been years since I showed photography, it was really sort of my first art form, my first love. And I've been returning to it, both because it's really, you know, we've all got cameras in our pockets now, but it's also become a way for me to have an alternative sketchbook. And these are obviously from Instagram. You can see some screenshots, but my obsession with line has really expanded to, and I think a lot of this has to do with photography, has expanded to explore different kinds of shapes and colors. And so this, you know, photography informs my practice in ways that aren't usually seen or evident or visible in what I show, except on Instagram. When Julia invited me to make another print with her, I had a lot of ideas, and after some back and forth, she really she talked me into, I couldn't really envision it, but she talked me into working with some of these images and to try to think about how to translate a photograph using printmaking processes was just like, it was fascinating. And even though we were going to be sort of inverting my usual process of not wanting to be able to see or imagine what I was making, I was really excited about it. Can you advance to the next? I think I should have shifted you. So this is a small sculpture that is really from the time around when I was making the earlier prints with Julia. And the next one. These are in the exhibition at Waterstone, and I was when we were asked to include some work to accompany the print, I really wasn't sure. I didn't want to put the photograph there because the print has become something completely different from the photograph. And so I was really just sort of curious to see what it would be like to place some of these images, some of these sculptural works where it's really about kind of the energy of the line and a certain sort of quality of, or like a sort of presence of a material with this print that I worked on with Julia, which is the next one. Can you advance? So this is an image. We looked at a lot of different images and chose this one from the pond at Laurelhurst and at Laurelhurst Park in Portland. And a lot of the images, as you saw, that I've been making have to do with reflected water and have this very kind of abstract, really intense hard cropping. So that was part of why we chose this one, and also because of some of the branching lines and the sense of sort of shadow and light and up and down. And I will say that the specific processes of making this print were so there were so many steps that I, even right after we did it, I don't know if I could explain them, but it was amazing to try to think about and break down this image. And when I got back to my studio and was looking at the photographs of the walks again, it was like I had gone so deep and so far into this photographic image that it completely transformed how I think about the photographic work that I do, and this sort of, sketchbook that I keep in my camera and that I post on Instagram. Anyway, part of the magic of working with Julia is just that her expertise and her patience can really lead you into places you'd never, ever imagine. And I'm still just sort of sitting with and thinking about this print and the process and what else I could do if I had the chance to make prints using etching or other kinds of printmaking techniques. Anyway, I'm grateful and honored and just so excited about the entire portfolio. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Heather. That was exactly the through line I needed to hear. That's fascinating. Thank you so much. That concludes the presentations from our artists. So we're really happy at this point to take any questions from the audience that you may have. I know I jotted down a bunch of questions, so but there's no need for me to fill up all the time with questions. But I guess as folks are formulating questions or ideas, we could just start with Julia. Just I think a few people have sort of highlighted this, so anyone's welcome to join in on this. But Julia, how do you how is the process of selecting artists? How does that really happen? Like, how do you know which sculptor makes a good printmaker, or, you know, how does that process really work? What do you look for? How do you think about that work?
Well, that process has evolved over 20 years. At first, it was invitation. Frank Boyden and I would get together on the phone. I was still living in New York, and he had a lot of recommendations for me. And I was open to working with pretty much anyone he recommended. And he ended up recommending a lot of ceramic artists because he's a ceramic artist and he knew a lot of people in the ceramics world. So Patti, to answer your question, that's how I found you. It was through Frank Boyden. And I feel very, very lucky to have met the ceramic artists I have through Frank. And I will say that they make great printmakers because, as Patti said, there are a lot of similarities. I have a kiln myself, and I mainly make tiles and paint on tiles. I like ceramic as just a canvas, not a 3D practice at all, but flat work. I like making tabletops and wall pieces and things. But there are a lot of similarities, including the press, as you said. So anyway, at first it was just invitation only. I had a few artists from New York I thought would make good print, you know, make or make the most out of the residency. And then I wanted to branch out a little. So then it was sort of past artists. I asked them to recommend people they thought would benefit and also thrive. It's not for everybody coming to the middle of nowhere and working with somebody they don't know. It's intimate and it's intense and it's not for everybody. So it branched out to recommendations from the artists. And then we decided it would be a good thing to put it on the website as an application process. So now it's a combination of people who just apply because they see it on the Sitka website, or they see it through there's a website for all artist residencies all over the world, and if people have seen it on that and applied, or they've applied through Sitka. And I still also invite people if I come across an artist whose work, you know, and you ask me how do I know? It's really intuition. I have to say I really have to like their work myself. Or feel drawn to it in some way, and also see the potential and that they could embrace printmaking. Yeah, I've met people through the application process. I never would have met through the recommendation process. So I think right now it's a good balance between invitation and application.
So
does that answer the question pretty well?
Yeah, perfect. And so then I guess I would kind of ask the opposite question of the artists, is whether you applied or you magically got a letter in the mail, you know, what is your thought process moving from the place you normally work towards printmaking? You know, was there a thought process? Did you just sort of think, oh, cool? Or how and so maybe like, how did it start when you arrived, and then at the end, where did you land? Any answer anywhere in that realm is great. Anyone who wants to try that one?
Well, I did not apply. I just walked out of the house one day and followed this trail of breadcrumbs, and then came to the coast and there were elk everywhere.
No, Ryan, I saw your work in a show at Disjecta that Heather and her husband, Mark, took me to a show at Disjecta one year, and you had a painting in it, and I fell in love with your painting, and that's how you got invited.
Yes.
So did you, like, when you arrived at Sitka, you sort of alluded to this, Ryan, you know, you're sort of, you arrive and you've not really done printmaking, and then this person's throwing all this information at you, and you sort of think like, oh, I have to do this. Like, was there even for any of you a hesitation to come to do this, especially if you had just been invited rather than, or, you know, if you saw the application, what made you decide to apply? And don't forget to unmute yourself. There you go. Go for it, Patti.
Okay. Well, I think Frank must have been the one that recommended me, and I'm pretty sure that might have happened. And then when I got to, I wasn't afraid to go at all. But because when I got there, I think I must have had a drawing before I got there, and I gave it to Julia, and Julia is so easy to be around, and she kind of, she's very comfortable. So I never had any reticence in terms of being frightened or anything about the media. And she just kind of held my hand, and so I was very lucky, and I love printmaking. My parents used to buy these German, I guess they were etchings or whatever, and when I was a kid, and I used to see them around my house, hanging on the wall. And so I was always kind of curious about, but when I was, in school too, the printmaking department was really active at the university at that time. And yeah, so it was always a very curious thing for me to go up there and look at it, but knowing that they kept discouraging me from doing it because of the intensity of the technique. And so Julia was just very, very comfortable person. So anybody that goes there will totally enjoy yourself and not be afraid.
Go ahead, Heather.
My story is more like a just maybe behind the scenes in the decision process. So I was invited by Julia, and she then in that conversation became one of the few first people to know that I was pregnant at the time, because my first thought was, is it okay to like, I'll be 8 months pregnant then, and can I be in the press? And so we had some like kind of unexpected logistics to go through. But that just sort of follows along with how accommodating and how incredibly generous Julia is. I mean, it was just like, we'll figure it out. And I was there were some funny pictures of like trying to lean over the press, but I couldn't quite get close enough to anyway.
Well, I remember you were scheduled to stay in a house down a really steep, slippery, moss-covered road. And we did move you up to a house closer to the studio because I was worried about you having to walk back down to Ken and McKee's house. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, yes, Jake dates our collaboration for sure.
Anyone else on that?
I can tell a little Julia story about how we came together. I think it was Adrian Arleo who who came before me that recommended me, right?
Yes, it was.
And so I arrived at Sitka, and I was a little anxious because I'm very spontaneous, and I thought printmaking has a lot of plans, and I was a little anxious about that. But I was also really excited, and I knew that that Julia came from Pace Editions, and I was kind of curious because I had studied under this really brilliant printmaker, which I also just kind of stumbled into. He let me into a graduate class when I was an undergraduate, and he just rocked my world in this huge way. He was this really amazing person that has really impacted a lot of what I still continue to do. I think about him often. His name was Joe Wilfer. And so I got to the place where Julia delivered the keys, here's your keys and there's your house, and I'll see you tomorrow. And like Ryan said, and we'll work every day, and this is what we'll do, and this is your schedule. And I said, okay. And then before I say goodbye, can I just ask you a question? And she said, yes. And I said, do you know Joe Wilfer? And she said, how do you know Joe Wilfer? And then I said, I study with Joe Wilfer, and she said, give me a hug. So.
And I don't hug a lot. Yeah. Joe was the artistic director at Pace Editions when I first started printing there, and he changed my life as well. He was the most creative, generous, driven printmaker artist I've come across in my life, and he is sorely missed. He passed away in 1995. But he changed my life, and I wouldn't be the printmaker I am today without Joe. So yeah, that was a connection we had.
Yeah.
Part of the Wisconsin Mafia.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so that, yeah, it got deep pretty quick then. Also, it disarmed my fears too. Because I thought, well, she studied with Joe, and Joe was really kind of wild, and I was like, this is going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to known and worked with both of them.
We have actually a sort of related question on the board that I don't know if any of you might want to jump into. Barbara asks, are there people like Julia found in other media disciplines? So someone who guides more than just mixing inks or getting the kiln ready, etc. Have any of you been that person, experienced that person? Anyone want to jump in on that?
Working in bronze is like that. I could say I did some bronze works with Walla Walla Foundry and other places too, but Mark Anderson, who's the head of Walla Walla Foundry, who also recently passed, which is really sad. I used to discuss, when I introduced the work that I was doing, whether it was a public art project or something, I would say, and Mark, these are my collaborators, because it wouldn't be possible without them. And that's how I feel about Julia too. I couldn't make this work without somebody collaborating. And Mark was very adamant about, this is not a collaboration. I am a tool you are using. And I don't agree with that. But it was similar in many ways, because things were made possible to me that I wouldn't have understood material wise and technically, and yeah.
Gotta unmute.
I think in ceramics, generally there's a lot of ceramic studios around, like in Seattle area. There's three main ones. And so there's this, I think when you're in a media like ceramics, there is a lot of collaboration, because you have to share machines, like the kilns, and you got to maintain wheels, and so there's this kind of dialogue that you have within the community. And I think that's one thing that kind of attracted me about ceramics, is because people, they have to share equipment. And so because you share equipment, you have to be pretty congenial with each other, and otherwise it won't work. So in that manner, I think it's not directly like Julia, who, like if you go into to a studio and there's somebody to help you like that. I don't know if that close of relationship in ceramics, but the collaboration among the group of ceramics, that's why I like people in ceramics, because they're always, they like to party, and they're, they like to drink.
Same with printmakers.
Yeah, right. So and I think it's not a kind of an isolated media generally. I mean, I have my own studio and I work in isolation, which I like, but in general, I think most people work in fairly large groups. So Julia, where did you go to school, undergraduate?
I went to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Oh, and then grad school?
I didn't go to graduate school.
Oh, you didn't?
I started apprenticing in print shops in New York right after undergrad.
Oh, cool. It's amazing that you got that job at Base.
Well, it was after working in a bunch of other print shops and gaining experience, and yeah, just one thing led to another. I was obsessed.
Oh.
Well, I don't see any more questions coming from the audience. Does anyone else have any wrap up thoughts or anything last words, pearls of wisdom for our audience? I'm so grateful to hear all of your stories and to see the work simultaneously with the stories. It really just adds so much to the work, both the prints and your work. I feel like I understand you much more deeply now, so I'm really appreciative.
Well, thanks for hosting.
Thank you everyone for coming, and please do come again next Thursday at 4 o'clock, and we will be hearing from most of the other artists in the exhibit. So please do come next Thursday, the 11th at 4, and there's a link on the Sitka Center website as well as the Waterstone Gallery website. And thank you again to Waterstone Gallery and to Jordan Schnitzer and to all of these artists and to Julia. So thank you so much and have a good night, everyone.